SwayamPrabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Good morning everyone. Welcome to the course An Introduction to Disability Studies. Now we are entering into the discourse of disability and aesthetics. So, the lecture number 11 is titled as Disability and Aesthetics. So, before we enter into this lecture of disability and aesthetics, let us go back and see what the previous lecture was all about and how does it connect with this discourse of aesthetics. So, in the last lecture we were talking about industry, capitalism, revolutions, and obviously the sense of modernization and how the new technologies are advancing and affecting the very discourse of disability. So, in the previous lecture I made certain points. Let me give you a highlight of it. The first point, which is extremely vociferous, or you can say is a very proclaiming, made by Wittgenstein, that there was no disability without industrial capitalism. So, I explained to you what does he mean by this. What he meant that had the industrial revolution not started, the very discourse of disability would have not emerged the way it is now. It does not mean that there was no idea of disability before industrial capitalism, but it means that now everything can be constituted as a disability provided it does not produce the capitalist economy. So, anything that fails or anybody that do not insursate, that do not considerate about producing political economy or industrial economy, then it will be considered as disabled. So, the point what it is making is this, that it has nothing to do with the body. It is not that there is something wrong with the body, but rather it has something to do that how you are going to produce a certain amount of money which going to incorporate the GDP or national income. So, this idea of Wittgenstein when he says that there is no idea of a disability without industrial capitalism, right. So, this is a one important point that I made. The second point I made, that it is not that technology or industrial capitalism was not doing anything good for people with disabilities, but the discourse which goes around disability makes this idea that it is more enabling, it is disabling, right. So, it is not only enables, it also disables. So, obviously, when we are looking at the good picture that technology is doing in collusion with industries, we need to also keep in the mind that how does it also disable people with disabilities. That is the second important point I made in the last lecture. The third important point that I was making is this, that if we are moving towards the process of modernization, I mean everything is becoming so modernized, now people are migrating from rural to the urban, and due to that there is a possibility that they have to come and encounter with people who are living in the cities. So, most often they are being judged, most often they are being treated and discriminated very perversely. So, the point is this, that agrarian economy, people from different bodies or body marked with differences, they were doing certain kind of a job which made them feel included. Whereas, when it comes to a capitalist economy, it is more about the specific talent or skill you must possess, then only you will feel as if you are part of the societal structure. Why are we talking about all this? Why are we discussing this? Why disability studies has to intervene in industrial capitalism, technology, modernization, so on and so forth? Because the one thesis line that combines the entire lecture is about the discourse of inclusion, which means to say that anywhere, anything, if it somewhere talks about the discourse of inclusion or inclusion, disability studies has to intervene. right. So, either it's a technology or it's industries or any buildings or you name anything under the sun. If it is going to talk about exclusion and inclusion, we have to talk about discourse of disability. And also when I am talking about all this, we must also keep in mind that disability studies does not only address the problem of people with disabilities, but rather it concerns everyone who are facing marginalization, and that is where marginal identity comes into the picture, that if marginal identity has to say something, it may take help of disability studies, right. So, also when I am talking about these ideas and discourses, remember that in academic culture, since 2010, we started talking about disability studies, and before that it was almost missing. When I am saying missing, what I mean to say that it was not taken very seriously, it was just ignored. People were talking somewhere here in bits and pieces, but it was not talked vehemently, argued properly, so that the discourse of inclusion can be promoted. So, this is what I was talking in the previous lecture. Now, the connection which I am going to make, why we need to talk after the 10th lecture, which was dedicated to industrial capitalism and disability, why I am going to talk about disability and aesthetics. So, see, the part of methodology, or let us say pedagogy, which I want you to understand, and the very reason why I am delivering this lecture is not just to teach you disability studies, is also to talk about the methodology you should employ when you are reading books or when you are going for research. So, for example, the question that I always ask you to raise is why the lecture number 11 is titled Disability and Aesthetics, and why there was a lecture number 10 was on industries, revolutions and disability. So, it is not that it is a random selection of the chapters, right. There is a connection from one chapter to the another, so that you can understand the way argument is proceeding that concerns disability studies. Your job is to find out the connection, that why is it so. In fact, ask questions, because until and unless you ask this kind of a question, you find it that it is how it is, like lecture number 11 is on aesthetics, lecture number 10 was, and so on and so forth, and that is how it is continuing. As an intriguing mind, as a mind which is curious to do research or to understand different discourses, our job is to raise questions. So, let me make a connection so that you can understand why is it so. So, the lecture number 10 was talking about capitalism, industrializations and disabilities. What it also did, right, industries and capitalism. In terms of representation, it changed the very idea of the body itself, which means to say that because of intervention of new technologies, obviously, I will suggest you that you read, there is a book called Television by Raymond Williams, and there is another book, it is like not a very book, but it is like a small book, contains only 80 to 90 pages, is Walter Benjamin. He has written a book called The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction, right. Look at this title, The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction, and this book was not written in 16th, 17th century, obviously, because Walter Benjamin was not there. So, how could he write it? But no, that is not the point. The point is that he could see that the scenario, the society and also the production of art is getting transformed. Is getting transformed because of the extensive intervention of technology in our everyday sphere. And that is why Benjamin Raymond Williams like people are going to talk and discuss about the work of art in the age of mechanical reproduction. And in that book, why I am talking about that book, so that you can relate, you can make a connection, the kind of discourse going to emerge in this lecture. In the work of art in the age of mechanical reproduction, he is more talking about the photography, right. He is more talking about what photography could do to us, what photography is doing to us. In fact, how photography is involved in changing the everyday our perception, right. What do you mean by perception? How do you perceive something? So, imagine a age, imagine a time imagine your interaction with your friends or people or family when there was no photography, right. So, when there was no photography, people used to say that memory is going to part of capturing ideas or thinking about it, and you are going to talk about it. What photography did? It is not only capturing the images, right. You can say that it just simply captures the images. No, I mean, there are a lot of discussion, like each chapter talking about different things, but I will just give you a summary and will leave the other discourses for your reading and for your understanding later on. But what it also does, the photography, is that it gives you a kind of a lens through which only you are going to capture the images, right. Let us say, for example, I am giving an example so that you can easily relate. So, let us say, for example, when you are reading this or listening this recorded videos, obviously you know that camera, video technologies are involved in recording these lectures. So, what is happening in the name of recording? The camera is focused on certain parts of my body. It only going to record the certain things and going to ignore or exclude certain things, which means to say you are not going to see the setup, the entire setup in which it is being recorded. You are not going to see who is available, who is present, who is absent. So, this is a very political thing. This photography is not a very neutral act. So, the Walter Benjamin's argument is that when you are capturing something, you know very clearly which one to capture and what not to capture, right. So, let me break this discussion here and connect it, how we can relate it with industrial capitalism and aesthetics. So, industrial capitalism started producing a lot of technology like photography, video, images, so on and so forth, and obviously artificial intelligence I have already discussed that how it is going to change everything that is surrounds us. So, in that industrial capitalism, now there are certain kind of a bodies being produced as able, strength, muscular or so called acceptable. And whereas it is also producing a kind of a body where it is inviting your attention as if it is a weak, not important, pitiable, or you are going to invite the attention of being sympathetic something, right. So, this is what photography does. Now, how it is related to the aesthetics, right. The lecture today we are going to talk about disability and aesthetics. First question is, what is aesthetics? Again, when I am teaching these lectures or whenever you are engaging in humanities and social sciences, you are not going to read the dictionary meaning of anything, but rather you are going to understand that how this very idea is conceptualized by thinkers in humanities and social sciences. So, aesthetics what you get in dictionary is not what we are going to talk today. It is extensive discussion, understanding the way people have been thinking about aesthetics. So, let us say go back to the history for a second. There is Immanuel Kant which has talked about aesthetics like the critique of pure judgment and all that. But I will not talk about the Immanuel Kant, but I am giving a reference so that you can read this when you have a free time, and Kant is extremely significant when you are going to discuss disability and aesthetics, all right. So, what Kant says that? The Kant is the first one who intervened in the very idea of aesthetics. He says that aesthetic is not very apolitical, it is a very much political. And then let me move to the Walter Pater, who talks about arts for art's sake. So, here you see what is mean art for art's sake. It simply suggests that if you are producing any art, right, it is not political, you are just producing for art. There is no morality involved, there is no culture involved, there is no other perception or politics engaged into this. It is just talking about that it is a kind of a beauty, it is a sense of a beauty that is being projected before all of us, right. So, if you say that, oh no, this is against a certain section of people, or this is not talking about gender, this is not talking about caste, Walter Pater like a person is trying to distance art from morality, right. So, this is a distinction aesthetic studies during 18th-19th century is making, right, because this is the time when art is getting trapped in the discourse of politics and morality. because if you see the history, people read art so that they can enjoy, right. The art is more for your sensual appealing, or you enjoy it, it gives you a different kind of experience. Art was never considered as a political act, it was more as if it is meant for people who are reading it or who are watching any theatrical performance. They enjoy, they forget about it when they come back home, and they are indulged into their everyday activities. So, Walter Pater's this very idea is that art for art's sake simply suggests that this is purely aesthetics, which only means that I am more talking about that how something is very beautiful, how something is very good, how appeal it does to the people, or how it can capture the attention of the people. That is it, right. It is not that I am producing a kind of art which intended to revolutionize political atmosphere, or which intends to change the society, or which intends to challenge a certain oppressive structure of the society. This is not what Walter Pater is arguing for. But the moment we move further, this very understanding was politicized by people, and obviously if you have read, let us say for example, Bakhtin, Marx obviously goes to largest time to talk about it, but there is another name called Beckett, right. He is the one who is talking about that no, even theatre is not only to appreciate any beauty or the performances, but rather a kind of a production of art also talk about morality, or questioning the very idea of morality ingrained in a particular society. So, Bertolt Brecht kind of a person is coming into picture, and he says that no, I am not happy, I am not okay with this kind of idea of art or aesthetics, that only we are enjoying, we are only appreciating any beauty. So, this is the problem, people started making it. Now, what is the connection between art and aesthetics now? Because aesthetics simply suggests that you are here to enjoy the sense of a beauty. So, you have a beautiful sense, let us say you look at the painting, and then you appreciate the artist or painter, you say that is a wonderful painting, nice how it is done, and then you enjoy and you come back. In fact, lot of the people started putting the paintings in their wardrobes or houses, right. So that people can enjoy and appreciate that yes, this is a nice house, there is a good painting of Pablo Picasso. Obviously, Pablo Picasso's painting is really expensive, it is not affordable by everyone, but what I mean to say that people are going to purchase this kind of a painting and putting in their houses. So, here the very idea of putting the paintings or the paintings is appreciation, like you just appreciate. So, this is what aesthetic is, right. This is like when you say something is looking aesthetically good, which it means to say that your sense of a beauty, understand this, now I am getting into the philosophical discourses after a point of time, because your sense of idea of understanding beauty is politically and culturally directed, and this is what people or previous kind of a thinker or people were missing it, right. They thought that sense of a beauty is something universal, which means to say that if something is beautiful, if something looks good, it must be appreciated, or it should be appreciated, or it will be appreciated across cultures. But the intervention of thinkers made this pretty idea that the very idea of appreciation is also political and cultural, which means to say that if you belong to a particular culture, you may find the very idea of a beauty different from the others. Like you must have heard this very quote that beauty lies in the eyes of beholder. What does that mean? It also suggests that it depends what kind of a subjective experience you have incorporated or being inculcated, and accordingly you are going to appreciate it, right. Let us say for example, let me give you an example so that you like this idea will be very clear to you. Suppose you attend a marriage, right. So, suppose you attend a marriage and a person coming from a different culture wears something which do not belong to your culture. Obviously, you will not find it aesthetically appealing, because you see that the culture you belong to, for you there is certain sense of a dress is only aesthetically appealing. So, this is here the point I am making. This is a more cultural thing, it is not something universal, it is not that it can be applied equally everywhere, and that is a point I have been making when I am discussing this lecture of disability studies, that anything, any discourse that you pick it up, you have to contextualize. Contextualize simply means that where does it come from, what community is indulging in this kind of act, whose idea it is, where it emerged, what kind of a culture it has. So, when you indulge into these things, you can get it. So, coming back to the idea of aesthetics, so aesthetics something means that how it appeals your sensual experiences, or your idea of the beauty is different from others. So, as far as it was considered as a neutral, right, it was not politically motivated. Now, people are intervening and they are saying no, that is not true. This very act of aesthetics is politically motivated and appealing as well, right, and that is where the modern cultural studies scholar intervene, and they make the production of art also a politically motivated act. They made this point that something which is being produced, we are going to read that. Let us say for example, what kind of a color has been used, why that kind of a color has been used, why there is a painting or there is a framework like this, what is in the background, why not something else in the background, what else is included, what is excluded, right. So, this is where the political thinkers started intervening. So, they made this picture pretty clear that aesthetics is a very much political act. So, I am sure that I have made this point now clear to you. Let me move the another point, that how aesthetics concern disability studies. Let us go back and talk about the representation, right. Now, you see that if you go to 1760s images produced about people with disabilities, and then if you proceed further, you will see that the very production of disabled images vary. It is very different from what it used to be. Second, if you look at the paintings, most of the time the images of people with disabilities were missing from there. It was not at all present. The very idea that because people realize that if you put the people's disabled images, like images of people with disability or deformed body, people will be very uncomfortable, people will not like it, and that is where disability studies intervene and they talk about that this is what the politics is all about. You do not want to make a people comfortable with disabled images produced in your surroundings, right. So, the connection between aesthetics and disability is simply this, that when you are talking about aesthetics, disability studies also talk about that why are you not including disabled images. Why is it so that always in the public spheres, I have been to the Europe, I have been to US, I have been to maximum part of India, and you see that when you look at a certain statue, do you see any statue of people with disability? Like anywhere, every time what you see, obviously the statues of leaders, statue of certain saints, statue of certain nice, good, great people who have done really good to us or to our country. But even in the remote sites or anywhere, even if you see certain images, you will not find that. You will find only a perfect image or a body which is considered to be more muscular and strong. Second point is, in certain museums, you will see that there is a body which are handicapped, right. Like there is only bust, like this much part of the body, and there is no hand, it is just simply bust standing over there. Now, the psychoanalytic studies have been done and they made this idea that when people see these images in the museums, people think that how beautiful it would be if the proper body stands out, right. So, there is a kind of a desire created in you that you can think about what Lacan calls ideal imago, which means ideal image. So, when you see this kind of image in or like kind of a bust in museums, you personally experience, you personally think that I should be like this with the perfect image, means proper, and then you desire to be like this, and that is where the politics of homogenization starts, right? A kind of muscular images or beautiful images starts with. So, here there is a connection what I made between disability and aesthetics, and that is why it also linked with industrialization, capitalism and revolution of 19th century. So, before I move to the first slides, it is my humble request that please read a book by Raymond Williams. Let me write this for you. Look at the slide please. Raymond Williams' book is called Television, simple, I am sure that you can remember it. And then there is another book is called The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction, right? Okay. So, this book is by Benjamin. I mean, the moment you will Google it, you will immediately find this. But before I go into this, again let me make this clear that why are we talking about it? Why are we discussing work of art in the age of mechanical reproduction by Benjamin and Raymond? Is simply understand that most of the time I have seen students and scholars, they only read the books which are directly talking or associated with disabilities. But understand that even those books which are produced directly linked with people with disabilities, they are using the framework or ideas given by these thinkers like Williams, Stuart Hall, Bakhtin, or let us say Benjamin. So, that is why I am constantly requesting you guys that when you are reading these things, make sure that you read these kind of books, so that you can easily comprehend the discourse. Because there is a book by disability, there is a book by Tobin Siebers, Disability Aesthetics. I am writing down the name of his as well, and I would humbly request that once I finish this lecture, you are supposed to read that book. This is called, on your screen is available, Disability Aesthetics by Tobin Siebers, S-I-E-B-E-R-S. He was from University of Michigan. Unfortunately, he is no more, but his contribution on disabilities is extremely extensive. So, there is another book by Tobin Siebers called Disability Theory, right. So, you can also read that book, but this book what I am talking about, Disability Aesthetics, you will, the moment you start reading this book, you will see that Tobin is talking about Kant, Tobin is talking about Hegel, Siebers is also talking about philosophical discourses, how it emerged, and these kind of discourses. And that is why I am constantly requesting you that you must read these books, so that when you enter into the discourse of disability aesthetics, or you read this book, it will be comprehensible. Otherwise, trust me that without reading these people, if you read Disability Aesthetics by Tobin Siebers, it will not be comprehensible. All right. So, moving to the slide number 1, here you see, look at the slide please, and here you see there is a two kind of a photo that I have put for you. So, the one photo you see there is a beautiful lady, right, and you see this decapitated or handicapped sort of, and then there is another man, you see. So, the point is that this is not simply neutral image, right. You may see this image and then you move forward, then you see that, oh, what's okay, nice, you take a photos with this and that is all. No. As a disability scholar, obviously, I cannot give lot of time to explaining what this picture is about, but just one sense, you see this another image is a more muscular, right. Look at this image, this is a more muscular, look at the kind of a body it is, and then you see the another. So, this is a image of a woman and this is an image of a man. So, I will not get into the politics of these images, but so one thing, that is how a man should like, and the beauty of a woman, like look at this, the beauty of a woman should look like this. Obviously, does not mean that they are asking or assuming that there should not be hands, but it is also what Laka says, that it is a kind of arousing your desire, that how beautiful that woman would be if she has both hands. All right. So, here you see that how muscularity and femininity is produced by work of art, right. So, this is not a neutral simple act which is aesthetically good. It's not aesthetically only good, it's a politically motivated, where the discourse of patriarchy is being promoted, right. Let me go to the next picture. That is where becomes a portrait of him. I mean, it's a very famous painter called Schmidt has produced it, and then second is woman with a bag and the double portrait of S and L. Why I am putting these images in the discourse of disability and aesthetics? These kind of images became prevalent in 20th 19th century, like later 20th century or the beginning of the 20th century. So, here you see these images are coming after industrial capitalism or like it has flourished, it has taken over the economy of agrarian or socialist economy. So, these pictures obviously as a modern painters are talking about the inner anguish or suffering of a person in contemporary period, that how anguished, how tortured, how alienated he or she is. So, you see, so there is no beautiful image, right. These look at the face, right. This is a long elongated faces. Look at this face, right, or these two faces. So, these are not the beautiful faces of a beautiful handsome people. These are kind of sketches which talk about that how disturbed, anguished, in a difficult time the people are living. So, this painting is not aesthetically appealing. What I mean to say, it's not like wow, you don't see this painting and you appreciate it, wow, nice painting. No, you don't do that. So, what do? You look at the painting and stay for a second and hold on yourself. What this painting is about? Why is it so? Why these are disfigured images? Why the face of this person is deliberately distorted, which means to say this is not image of a XYZ. This is the painting done with a certain objective, right. So, you hold on yourself in the modern paintings stops you. Modern painting does not leave you in awe and appreciation, modern painting hold you. When you go home, you are still thinking about those images, you are still moved, you are carried with those images, are you still thinking about it, what this picture is about, how does it disturbs you. That is objective. The objective is to disturb you and make you realize that the kind of a time in which you are living in, we all are disfigured, if not physically, mentally. But again, we are in disability studies. Now, you see that why is it so in the modern arts. In fact, Tobin Siebers talks extensively about it. Why the modern arts are more about disfigured images. Go to Pablo Picasso or you name any painter. Let us say you go to any museum and you see the paintings, you will realize that all paintings are something else. They are not the beautiful images or beautiful painting. These are the images which are trying to disturb you. And why these images are of a kind of a body which is deformed, squeezed, tensed, disabled most importantly, right. So, here you see the modern art is impossible without taking the help of disability. It is not possible at all, and that is why today we are talking about disability and aesthetics. Let me go to the next slide, please. You see this woman. Look at these women's two faces, right. Look at the madam, look at the slide, please. Madame Kisling by Amedeo Modigliani in 1970s, as I was talking about, that 20th century these kind of images were being produced. It is an Italian painting, oil on canvas. So, Moise Kisling lived in the same Paris building as Amedeo Modigliani in 1916. The painting is likely portrait of Kisling, right. So, this beautiful image of oil portrait on canvas, portrait of a woman in a hat on the motifs of painting by Amedeo Modigliani, right. And then again you come and see this, right. This is more or less the same time, and you can hold on a video for a second, you can stop a video for a second, and then you can watch these images before I enter into the discourses, right. Look at these images. Is this a beautiful image? Obviously not. Look at the contrast that I put. Here there is a woman with the beautiful hair, the beautiful hat, properly dressed, and also you look at the posture of that woman, nice, right? And then this woman with proper tie, shirts, blazer, there is a proper haircut, right? So these two images are talking about the beautiful woman. How do they look like? Look at the, like even the cosmetics, like look at the lipsticks, right? Eyes, like so. There's a color, you know, all canvas. Look at this color background, and then the moment we switch to this one, you see the huge contrast. How are you going to look at this image? Right? No lipstick, no beautiful dresses, no different colors in the background. Look at this one as well, right? Think about it. I am not going to explain you for a second. I have already explained you the most of the ideas, but what I want from my students and friends that they should think before they move further. They should hold for a second and then they should proceed. They should understand that why Vivek Singh is portraying two contrasting images in two different slides. How does it talk about disability studies, and most importantly, how does it talk about the connection between disability and aesthetics? All right, let's move to the next slide, please. Now, look at the first point that I am making in the slides. Aesthetics explores the intricate interplay of sensation experienced by certain bodies in the presence of other. This concept suggests that the human body, along with its emotional connection to the other bodies, forms the bedrock of beauty perception. It emphasizes that aesthetics struggles to fully disengage from its inherent corporeal nature. In this framework, the human body assumes dual roles as both the creator and recipient of aesthetic experiences. The third point, it caps entities admired for their capacity to evoke emotional shift in their creators, imbued with a lifelike essence typically associated solely with the humans. However, that is a point you need to hold on for a second here. Not all bodies elicit identical aesthetic responses. Taste and disgust emerge as a dynamic reaction reflecting the ease or difficulty with which one body integrates with another. I will come to this point and explain more, but let us other 2 points which in relation to this point. Certain bodies may provoke sensory aversion, right? There is another point, sensory aversion, while other evoke delight. These reactions unveil the corporeal foundation upon which aesthetic phenomena are constructed. So, despite this, a persistent tradition seeks to supplant the corporeal essence of aesthetics with idealistic and disembodied interpretations of art. Okay, so let me make it more simple for you, right? So, when you look at this, this is talking about taste, this is talking about taste, and then taste and delight, right, the moment you look at this picture. And then when you move to this picture, this kind of picture, it is talking or it is about disgust. Now, why is it so that this picture is more about delight? The moment you see picture, you feel good, you are happy, nice, wonderful, you appreciate that. At the moment you move to this picture, you feel more disgusted, you feel disturbed, right? Why is it so that there is a sense of aversions? It appeals to you. It appeals a sense of aversion for multiple reasons. The one reason is that you do not encounter this kind of paintings or images of people in your surroundings every day. Second, the very idea of the ideal beauty or the ideal image provoked by aesthetically since the ages is not this one, but the other one, right. That is a particular reason that why there is a reason of aversions when you see this kind of painting. Let us look at this point now. Look at this back again. So, there is a persistent tradition seeks to supplant the corporeal essence of aesthetics with idealistic and disembodied interpretations of art. So, the point is this, that when we are looking at that kind of aesthetic paintings outside, since that it is a disembodied, we are going to interpret the art as if it is a disembodied body. It is idealistic body. It is a body which is being desired for people to be like this. So, that is idealistic about it. But whereas, when we move and shift something else, we find that no, this is a kind of a politics that is being politically motivated, is a culturally produced. It is not a neutral image. Thinking about it as a neutral image of making a conjunction or conjecture that everyone desired the same, and that is where our problem is start with. All right, let us go to the next slide, please. For instance, the concept of disinterestedness conceived in the 18th century and enduring to the present day divorces artistic pleasure from bodily sensation. Similarly, the 20th century notion of opticality negates the corporeal nature of visual perception. The consequence is non-materialistic aesthetic framework that diminishes the significance of body and constrains the scope of artistic definition. Let me hold it for a second here, because this is a very strong point that is being made by this slide. Obviously, the first time I have come across the very term called disinterestedness is by Matthew Arnold in the 19th century, because the very reason that he was extremely disturbed that art is being interpreted differently. People are talking about incest, people are talking about immorality through the art, and that is where he comes and he says that no, our culture is being corrupted. Our job is to project or rescue our culture, because the kind of art, the kind of literature being produced, it is corrupting us. And I am sure that if you go to the Restoration period, you also realize that there is a revival of theatres, because theatre was also closed down and people were thinking that theatre has become a stage, is a platform from where immorality is emerging. It is corrupting every individual, because people are watching that kind of theatre and people are indulging in that kind of act, because it is being shown by those actors, and that is why people realize that we must stop performance in the theatres. But obviously, this is why the kind of a claim was made, but the reason was this, that the kind of theatre started produced, like the kind of ideas was talking about, it was challenging the hierarchy, it was challenging the status quo, it was challenging the upper class mentality. And that is a particular reason that when set of people got disturbed, when the set of people got challenged, they started stop banishing or criticizing theatres, and it led to ban on theatres. But as you know, that ban on theatre is not a very simple act, it is more political, right. Moving ahead, when we also come into the Victorian age, we also realize that Matthew Arnold is very disturbed, right, and his book is A Culture and Anarchy. Read that the way he defines culture, right. He meant that art is only meant for the elite people, and he also defines that what kind of art will be accepted as a form of art. And trust me that most of the people still today are being governed by the mentality of what Arnold speaks about the idea of a culture and the idea of art. And that is why when the lower form of art, so called lower form of art, is not still taking place in the academic culture, and that is where we have a problem with. All right, but obviously, because of the intervention of cultural studies and disability studies, now this kind of a thinking of Arnold is being challenged. But what we also notice in a further point of time, that there is a set of rigid people who are not letting culture studies and disability studies come into the majority or the mainstream. However, the point what I am making is that Matthew Arnold is the first one who is talking about disinterestedness. What is disinterestedness? He is talking about that, let us look at something, and when you are appreciating it, when you are talking about it, you are not supposed to bring your subjective experience. Let us analyze the art which is very objective, or objectively you talk about. So, which means to say that your personal interest should not be there. I mean, this is nothing but a very political intervention by saying that you appreciate the way author wants you to appreciate that beauty. However, people did not accept it later on, and obviously they started challenging it. So, first time when I listen to this, the concept of disinterestedness is from or not, but obviously it moved forward, and that is where we have very much relation with the opticality, which means to say that any visual images which are being produced to you, you are not supposed to bring your subjective experiences to analyze or to interpret, but rather you see it more objectively. Do not involve yourself, but distance yourself, right. Now, look at the slide again. Here you see, again I am reading it so that I can make this point clear to you, that the consequence is not materialistic aesthetic framework that diminishes the significance of the body and constrain the scope of artistic definition. When any kind of art is being influenced, or you are not letting people's perception intervene, what it happens that it constrains the scope of significance of art. You do not allow others to bring a new meaning to this. So, I mean, this is where more Stephen Greenblatt like people will intervene, where that it's on autonomy of a reader you are restraining it, right. You are restraining the autonomy of reader, and you are not supposed to let this happen, all right. So, this is a point slide is making, but that when you say that it should be, there should be disinterestedness, you are basically not letting the art flourish the way it should. Moving to the next slide, next point. In the realm of Crip aesthetics, there is a staunch refusal to accept the depiction of a healthy body, right. There is a staunch refusal to accept the depiction of the healthy body along with its ideals of harmony, integrity and beauty as the sole arbiters of aesthetic merit, right. So, what this argument is talking about, what this argument is making is that when you are producing any work of art, obviously talking about painting or images, only three things you are supposed to be concerned about. The one is integrity, second one is beauty, and the third one is harmony. But again you see, people tend to fail, like they fail to understand that the harmony, beauty and integrity, they are all normative conception of art. They all are normative conception of the art, which means to say that what is a beauty? Which means to say the only thing that is produced by the elite people. You are supposed to align with that elitism, and then it would be called as a beautiful art. Harmony means what? That do not show something which is disturbing. However, it is very much prevalent. Psychological realism is coming into the 19th picture, and it's also talking very voluminously about the psychological realism. And if you look at the stream of consciousness of the 20th century entire novels, it's more about that how an individual man or so-called modern man is extremely disturbed, his harmony is challenged, his internal balances are not in the same sync. So, the point is this, that the very three standard which is talking about, this one is a harmony, another one is integrity, third one is a beauty. It is all also political, they are not neutral, right. So, this is where we have to question the very idea of the aesthetic merit, that it should be harmonious, it should look beautiful and there should be integrity. But when you look at the previous pictures which I showed, it is not beautiful, it is not talking about integrity, and also it is not harmonious, right. There is no harmony, things are very disfigured, right. So, this is where disability studies again challenge or debunk that kind of a notion. Look at the next slide please. Crip aesthetics celebrates beauty that may appear by conventional standards as flawed or fractured. It is not diminished in its allure, it is often seen as even more profound as a result, right. Read this line again. This is talking about celebration of the beauty, which is conventionally considered to be the beautiful, but now it is being shown as a flawed, right. How can you look beautiful when you are internally disturbed? What about that kind of disorganized, not being in harmony? How we can bring out in the public domain that kind of images, all right. So, this is where we come to the next point. So, it's a look at the slide please. It is important to note that the aim here is not to highlight the exclusion of disability from the annals of aesthetic history. As such, exclusion has not truly occurred, but rather to underscore the palpable influence of disability within it. So, this objective can be manifest in two key ways. Firstly, by establishing disability as a critical lens through which to integrate the underlying assumption that govern the creation, right. Look at the manifestation in two ways. First, establishing disability as a critical lens through which to integrate the underlying assumption that govern the creation and appreciation of aesthetics. What is the second? The second one is by elevating disability itself as an aesthetic virtue deserving of further exploration and development in the future. So, look at the next point. I have already explained this to you. Embracing disability not only enriches, right. When you embrace disability, it not only enriches, but also complicate our understanding of aesthetics, whereas rejecting disability serves to narrow our definition of artistic concepts and objects. I mean, I have been talking about this point, that how if you exclude the very discourse of disability, I mean, it narrows down your art in a very few points. It reduces the richness of the art, right. So, and also not only reduces the richness of the art, but it also reduces the very idea of aesthetics. So, disability studies is both ways, right. It also enriches art and also enriches the beauty and definition of aesthetics, right. Let us go to the point next. In the modern era, which I have already talked, so I will just explain this to you in a minute. Disability takes on aesthetic significance as it becomes a pivotal resource. This is what I have been talking about for artists in contemplating the essence of humanity. Aesthetics as a quintessentially human endeavor serve as the conduit through which individuals endeavor to redefine themselves, envisioning now emotional states, forms, potential futures, and subsequently materializing these imagining into tangible existence. So, within the realm of the modern art, disability ceases to be merely indicative of defect, degeneration or deviancy. Instead, it broadens our perspective on the spectrum of human diversity and offers viewpoint that challenges the long held assumptions within the history of aesthetics. What is the argument I am making here, right? What is the central argument I am making? The central argument that disability studies scholars have made, and I am just trying to translate it for you, is this, that if you remove the entire disability studies experience, what you are going to do, you are not going to talk about the very idea of a diversity in the humanities. You are not going to talk properly about the humanities itself. Not only that you are going to reduce the idea of art and idea of aesthetics, but also you are not going to serve the purpose of the art and also the humanity. What about the diversity? How you are going to talk about if you are thinking about only harmony or beauty or integrity, right. So, this is an important point I am making. Let us go to the next point. Disability aesthetics denotes the emergence of disability as a significant force within modern art. It reshapes artistic expression in the novel ways and providing a platform for the cultivation of disabled artists and subjects. So, art is inherently materialistic, right. I have already talked about it, reliant on the means of production and the availability of the material resources. It also exhibits a materialistic aspect in its relentless pursuit of embodying new understanding of the human condition. At its core, artworks can be seen as a corporeal entities, and aesthetics serve as the disciplined task with unraveling how certain bodies provoke emotional responses in others. So, art function as an active arena dedicated to exploring and expanding the spectrum of humanity that are willing to embrace. So, given the centrality of human emotions in the narrative of aesthetic history, it is unsurprising that disability emerged ubiquitously as disabled bodies and mind tends to evoke profound sentiments, right. So, the idea is this, that when we are taking the help of disability studies, when we are talking about the aesthetics, they both can reciprocate with each other. It's not only one will be benefited, it's about that if they both come together, which was politically excluded before the modernism started coming or modernism intervened. There was a very limited understanding of it, and that is why today we are claiming this, that if they both come together, they can enlarge the field, right. Let us see what the other slide is talking about. So, I mean, this is already I have explained to you. So, I mean, you can read it, but come to the next point. It is very imperative to contemplate how art transform when we regard disability as an inherent aesthetic value, right. This is what I have been telling you just now. So, we must integrate how the presence of disability necessitate the re-evaluation of traditional notion of artistic creation and appreciation. So, one of the most enduring function of detachment from the body in art history is undoubtedly the concept of disinterestedness. The doctrine posits that the potency of an artwork correlates directly with the extent to which the viewer can transcend their immediate desire and appetites. So, despite these facts, you see that there is a theme of a hunger, there is a theme of a desire, there is a theme of a greed, which pervade artistic expression. So, the doctrine of disinterestedness, that the primal urge have no place in the appreciation of art. This is the point I was talking about, that if you more vouch for disinterestedness, what about this primal urge, sexual feeling, hunger and other desires that you have, where will it go? It will not get translated into the art, and then it will not serve the purpose of art, right. So, this is why disability studies criticizes vehemently the very discourse of disinterestedness. Look at what McCarthy has to say. Look at the slide, please. McCarthy challenges this classic doctrine by exposing its inherent censorship, not only of the body, but specifically of the disabled body. He rejects the idealized portrayal of the human form, instead echoing the logic of the 19th century freak show within the confines of the museum, highlighting the bodily deformities through its exhibits. Right? So, these are the point which I have already explained to you. You can read these slides, but one thing I would like to conclude here our lecture is that disability studies intervention will only make fruitful discourse for aesthetics and also for art. So, until and unless we include the discourse of disability, it will be very limited experience, and obviously, the very purpose of art to serve humanity will be very unfulfilling. It will not reach to the destination, the very objective of art will not be completed, right. So, look at the next slides. Here one point which is extremely significant, and then you can think about it, that modern art becomes increasingly intervened with representation of disability. The presence of both disabled or wounded bodies elevated to signify the very essence of aesthetic itself. So, in contemporary discourse, no other subjects, look at this powerful claim that slide is making, no other subject hold as much potential to be embraced as an aesthetic expression as does disability, right. So, this is what my concluding remark of this lecture is. So, with this I would take a break. See you next time. Thank you so much.